Is this working? Hello. I love it. It's a very intimate setting. I feel like I should be sat on the front of the stage. Real privilege to be at the Extreme Hangout for the second time. I actually spoke about ocean conservation last year at the Extreme Hangout with the context of rowing across the Pacific Ocean, talking about whales and dolphins and all the wonderful wildlife on the oceans. But today, actually, I'm here to talk about those three words from last year: unite, act, and deliver, and the UAE's promise to net zero. Shrouded in controversy was COP28 in the United Arab Emirates, as I'm sure you would agree, but it was pretty massive. And it's understandably hard to position yourself as a future green economy when only 12 years ago, 80% of your GDP was from oil exports. And of course, nothing makes headlines better than oil production-hungry Arabs using the world's biggest climate conference to tee up $100 billion in oil deals. I mean, it'd be a wasted opportunity, wouldn't it? So, was the whole affair an attempt at a PR exercise and therefore an immoral fiasco? Well, this time last year, I was seconded to the COP28 Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum, the first of its kind, and our mission was to bring together the biggest and most powerful private sector audience in the world. In other words, as many billionaires as we could muster in one place. In the worldview of climate politics, this subgroup had not been fully held to account and were pretty unpopular amongst activist groups, and had therefore never really been invited or represented at COP. I'm not talking about the Golden Boys, the Mr. Bill Gateses. I'm talking about the conglomerate leaders of some of the biggest companies outside of the West, in South America, Africa, and Asia, including India and China, aka the Global South. Because they had been NFI, some had felt left out with no real sense of ownership of the problem, and therefore had no reason to really pay attention to COP and its policies and target outcomes. In fact, I had several very real conversations on the phone and exchanges over email, inviting some of the most senior executives of the biggest firms in the Global South who, and I'm not exaggerating, had never heard of COP. I don't need to tell you that there are a lot of billion-dollar companies in the Global South, and so it was a hell of a challenge getting in touch with them all and getting them to all to come to the UAE. But in the end, it was a great success. We got 1,300 CEOs from 80 countries to attend the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum. But what was actually achieved by COP's private sector forum? Well, a bunch of oil deals, of course. No. Over the two-day conference, the forum secured $7 billion in new climate finance, including commitments to energy transition, sustainable food production, and investments in green technology. I'd be delighted to share the full report with anybody here after this. The Global South were well represented with CEOs from all over the world, including the likes of Aliko Dangote, one of Africa's biggest energy magnates, in attendance. And yes, of course, Bill Gates came, as well as His Royal Highness King Charles, for good measure. At the main conference, meanwhile, with our world leaders, we saw a game-changing 200 countries agree to transition from fossil fuels. We saw the creation of the Loss and Damage Fund, securing $770 million in pledges designed to support countries most affected by climate change. And we conducted the first global stocktake on energy targets, assessing the progress made towards the Paris Agreement goals. So everyone made the right noises, at least. I'm not a climate expert, and I'm sure people in this room and at this conference are still cynical about a COP being held in Dubai or anywhere in the Middle East, for that matter. And the truth is, I don't know if the goals set by COP28 and others are on target to be met, or were exaggerated or fudged, or if oil deals were in fact done. But what I do know is that the combination of government initiatives and public pressure means that businesses are now desperate in the Middle East and in the UAE to demonstrate and show off their sustainability credentials. And if they don't have any, they're worrying about it. I work in the world of new technology, and I bridge some of the world's coolest tech companies into the Middle East, from Tesla to Joby Aviation. And you'll find it hard to find a new company either establishing in the region or from abroad that hasn't really sat down to find out where their sustainability gains are and where they need to be. I run a firm called Kestrel Global, and we help these companies establish in the region with a focus on the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But the UAE in particular has always been a very tech-savvy place and has heavily invested in building a future-proof economy and a smart city. And in a 10-year build-up to Expo 2020, with sustainability as a pillar, followed by COP28 last year, means that every new company I've worked with setting up in the region has a serious sustainability raison d'etre. What I see from the perspective of their advisor and the man that introduces them to government opportunities and the private sector opportunities is a mega pull. And deals fall down often when providers fail to demonstrate sufficiently their green credentials. COVID was also an amazing accelerator. Before COVID, the UAE imported about 95% of its food. The realization that they were vulnerable to supply chain shortage meant that since they've invested billions in food security, going from 43rd least secure in the world to 23rd, above Italy, in just 4 years. The advent of vertical farms like Pure Harvest and expansion of greenhouse farming with operators like Red Sea Farms means that there's actually an oversupply of tomatoes in the UAE. The UAE switched on its nuclear power plant in 2020, something unimaginable only a decade before, and the Mohammed bin Rashid solar park, 77 square kilometres, is currently producing 2,800 megawatts, on track for its 5,000 megawatt output by 2030. On site at the park, they have the Morrow Hub data centre, which is a 100 megawatt facility, which is completely powered by the sun. This is an important achievement because those that follow the numbers know that 6% of global CO2 emissions essentially come from data usage from your mobile phones. Each human doubles their data usage every year. And with the advent of AI, that threatens to increase even more. Innovation in other fields, like water production, by companies like Air Water, who take the abundance of humidity and make 100,000 litres of water, drinking water per day from their facility in Dubai, saving valuable groundwater sources and providing a viable alternative to gas-powered desalination plants, whilst pushing us away from single-use plastic bottles. Meanwhile, a recycling industry that didn't even exist prior to 2018 to now, there are 3 large, very successful waste-to-energy and recycling companies in BR, Dulsco and Tadweer, all backed by government initiatives. This, in conjunction with the arrival of companies like Hydroloop, which enable households to reuse 50% of their water, using water twice, essentially, within the household, means that households are getting to the point where they can recycle, reuse water, and therefore meaningfully contribute to the cause. Look, there is definitely some noise, a bit of showboating, and a bit of covering of backs in the world of climate action. But among the people who are just playing the game, there are also a bunch of people who are the game changers and who are more than moving the needle. And whilst the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, isn't there yet, they are certainly one of the main countries now leading the charge. And I hope that Baku can and will follow suit. And in the words of His Excellency Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, the outgoing COP president, I think we can unite, act, and deliver. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Harry Amos. I believe we're kind of slightly stalling for time here, but if you want to take a few questions.
Sure, I'll take some questions, yeah.
Anybody has questions from the audience about Kestrel or the UAE or...
Technology. Rowing oceans, I can talk about that too, yeah. Go for it, yeah.
Is a lot of the drive to become more sustainable due to the PR that comes with it in the UAE, or because long-term there's a real understanding?
Completely. It is absolutely a long-term thing. You know, diversification is common. Dubai started it. The UAE and Abu Dhabi quickly followed. Look what's going on in Saudi Arabia. They are desperate to open doors and diversify economy into multiple different sectors and technologies. Being sustainable is a key part of that. People don't want to come to countries which have the image of oil refineries burning, gas runoffs on the side of the road, which Dubai literally had up until COP28. That Jebel Ali, for those that were there, the Jebel Ali port, all the gas flares were still going on the side of Sheikh Zayed Road, which they've now turned off. So no one really wants to come to those countries anymore. So yeah, there's a bit of PR in there. There's a need to diversify, bring in that, grow the economy across multiple different sectors and be as sustainable as they can in the process. So yeah. Any more? No? Yeah?
Of all the different steps that you mentioned that are being taken forward, what are the most exciting, in your opinion, for the region?
Good one. I mean, if you'd asked me what I did for a living 4 years ago, I would have told you I was a farmer. Everything was ag tech. I mentioned it just there, but the fact that the UAE was reliant on hundreds of ships a week to come in and deliver their food meant that the UAE government, the first thing they did was to start buying up food supplies around the world, whole farms and whole stocks of livestock from Australia to Brazil. And then they were even buying the ships that they were coming in on so that no one else could take that. That's not a very efficient way of doing it, but it solves the problem in the short term. And then they started investing in vertical farming technologies. I mentioned Red Sea Farms, who can grow vegetables using salt water. The advent of cultivated meat and growing meat from stem cells, investing in that. Fresh food delivery companies, storage facilities, and all sorts of things that mean that they could actually kind of look after themselves. So that at the time, that was very, very exciting. I have a personal love for mobility, though, and we look after a lot of things that drive and fly. And one of the people I look after in the region is Joby Aviation, which is the eVTOL out of Marina, California, which will be launching its first commercial flights in the UAE in December. Toyota just put another $500 million in them. You can buy them. They're on the New York Stock Exchange at about $4 billion at the moment now. Future mobility is a big thing in the Middle East. The city is built. It doesn't have the failings and foibles of old cities. It's kind of built from scratch. They've built a system which is already future-proof, and air taxis is kind of the next layer on that. It's probably not going to move the needle on CO2 emissions from cars, but it's certainly going to be an attraction, that's for sure. And amazingly, the standard ownership of cars, and I live in an Emirati area, is still the Toyota, the coveted Toyota, the Nissan Patrol, and now every Emirati I know has a Tesla. Everyone. 1, 2, 3 outside their cars. They could probably just own one car, but they need all three. So electric cars, and BYD's just launched in the UAE. Electric cars are rife now. They turn out to be very efficient in the region. So that's moving quickly. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia will tell a pretty amazing story about investment in hydrogen and hydrogen economy, which is going to be the next layer of future green mobility. So, yeah, those are my two favorites. Yeah. Yes? Anyone else? No? No, just you. Good.
Thank you so much, Harry. It's been incredible. Really good to catch you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.